Welcome to another edition of the Rush Behind's Top 10 Countdown. This week we're looking at the top 10 greatest individual performances. And boy oh boy, wowee, some of these are simply unbelievable. With so many legendary players, remarkable games and match-winning moments scattered throughout the game's history, there will inevitably be some huge snubs on the list. But that's where we want to hear from you. Which players do you remember winning games off their own boot, guiding their sides to victory, or leading the charge in the most dramatic of triumphs? Let us know. Well, let's not mess about any further. Let's get into it. Here's a shock for everyone. We're starting off this list with a defender, and a very famous one at that.
Defenders in the 90s were the peasants in the AFL autocracy, ruled by the power-hungry forwards. Nobody really cared about them, and they were just there to make everyone else look good. All but one, Glenn Jakovich.
There's no doubt that Eagles legend Glenn Jakovich was one of the best players of his era. But what truly immortalised the West Coast great were his epic battles with the king, Wayne Carey. Their legendary rivalry was a hallmark of the game for over a decade, with us footy fans still debating who ultimately won out from their 16 encounters.
There are a lot of debates in the footy world. We've heard a couple of them: Ablett Junior, Ablett Senior, Dunstall or Lockett, Hawthorn or Geelong. We've heard them all plenty of times, but Jakovich and Carey is definitely a debate that will rage on for many, many years, and probably there won't be a definitive answer to it because they were just about dead even every time they played each other.
Jakovich's match-winning efforts in round 21 of 1994 saw him rack up a game-high 29 disposals and keep Carey to just one goal as the Eagles snuck home by 9 points. Jacko also picked up 3 Brownlow votes in the tense affair.
Very rare you see a guy be able to stop the great Wayne Carey, and Glenn Jakovich I think needs to get a little bit more credit for being one of the best key defenders to ever play this game, and goes to show that defenders can do a little bit more than just spoil. They can get the ball and they can be efficient.
Although the game itself may not be remembered in the history books as one of the greatest games of all time, being able to curb the king deserves its own special mention.
It's funny, we just spoke, you almost say negatively about the King's performances, but when Wayne Carey turned things around in 1996 against Melbourne, he put on a show, he kicked 11 goals against the D's and completely take the mick out of Melbourne. Sort of how, most teams have been doing to Melbourne since 1964.
Take the mick, he absolutely did, Nick. The King was on fire in this spectacular outing in 1996, single-handedly crushing the Demons with an 11-goal onslaught, complete with 31 touches and 15 marks.
All great kings had great coronations. Arthur pulled the sword out of the rock. Elvis introduced us to rock and roll. Joffrey, well, he was kind of just born, wasn't he? But Carey, perhaps the greatest of them all.
While Carey was already an established powerhouse of the competition and had already been crowned as a triple All-Australian, dual best and fairest and captain of the Roos, this was an undeniable showing of his class around goal. Carey never beat his famous 11-goal haul, but came close in 1999 with 10 against Essendon in one of the greatest games of the 1990s.
Watching Carey play in that game was like comparing champagne to cordial. There was no distinction between Carey and the very young Melbourne side who couldn't really do anything to stop the king on his day.
You could say his 11 snags were figures, fit for a king. Yeah, okay, that was terrible. I'll stop there. Next!
What? You want some rugby?
This doesn't seem quite right. Let me check the notes. Yeah, this is Anthony Koutafidis. Wait, it's the wrong Kouta clip. Hang on, stop. Rewind the tape. Much better. The year was 1999 and the Blues were down by 11 points in the prelim against hot favourites Essendon. It would take something magical to get the baggers over the line and topple the mighty Bombers, and it came in the form of Kudafidis.
There were two certainties heading into this day. The one being that Jeff Kennett's Liberal Party would be re-elected, and the other being that Essendon would steamroll Carlton and qualify for the grand final. Now, while nobody could see the Liberal Party's ultimate choke, Anthony Kudafidis was the one who made sure that Carlton would do the unthinkable and beat the Bombers in a year where they looked unbeatable.
Through the midfield, up forward and down back, Kuda did it all, willing his side over the line in a colossal half hour of play.
Kuda's final quarter in the 1999 prelim is simply one of the greatest ever. If you run through the stats sheets, 10 disposals, 6 marks, 2 goals, 4 clearances, 3 rebounds, which by my calculations, I'll just do the maths quickly, 120 Supercoach points.
Yeah, look, you're acting as about as good as Kuda's there, mate. Kudafidis' final heroics went down into AFL folklore, with Carlton legend Stephen Kernahan going as far as to say it was the greatest quarter of football ever played.
One of the great modern footballers, a beast of his time, midfielder, forward, defender, could throw him anywhere and he'd get the job done. But for Kuda, well, I guess it's unfortunate that he was riddled by injuries so much, because we'd be talking about him in the same vein that we do with Buckley, Voss and Hurd, and he might have even come away with a Brownlow one year.
Brownlow? Definitely. Academy Award? Don't think so.
"13 goals in a game of football."
Now, I love your dulcet tones, Nick, but I reckon let's leave this one to Hutto.
13! Can you believe it?
Ah, music to my ears. It had been a while since the big forward had kicked a jaw-dropping bag, but that all changed down in Tassie when Buddy Franklin kicked 13 goals to obliterate the Roos.
Well, before this game, incredibly, Buddy had kicked 21 goals, 36 in his first 9 games, and then this one he managed to turn it around and sort of even up the goals to behind ratio quite well, I have to say.
It stands as Buddy's most blockbuster haul, but Nick reckons he could have had another just as impressive all the way back in 2007.
Incredibly enough, I'm actually going to tell you another little story that Buddy could have kicked 13 goals in 2007, because there was one game where he kicked 2 goals, 11 behinds in one game. He could kick 13 twice.
Reckon we can hear it one more time, Hutto?
13! 13! Can you believe it?
We spoke about this one last week, and as you know, we just had to have a St Kilda one this week, so let's cut to Chris.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Athos. Well, but
Just a heads up, we've had a few internal complaints about you rambling on for too long about the Saints in these countdowns, so you've got 10 seconds.
right, well, I'll keep this one real quick. When you speak about Tony Lockett, no other player in the history of the game has had more 10-goal hauls. He kicked 22 bags with more than 10 goals. Absolutely.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be an impossible task. We spoke about this one last week as part of our top 10 greatest comebacks. But let's not shy away from Tony Lockett's extraordinary outing at the SCG in 1994, where he booted 11 goals to gift the Saints a stunning 1-point victory. For those who didn't know, St Kilda were down by 8 goals with 16 minutes left in the last term, before Big Plugger booted 4 final quarter goals. But as far as individual games go, this is hands down one of Lockett's greatest ever moments. There's nothing sweeter than responding to your critics, or revenge, or is that best served cold? Well, whatever way you take it, Dane Swan got the best of it after putting together a mind-boggling performance on one of the game's biggest stages, Anzac Day.
Swanee gave everyone a big up yours this day, because during the week all the media had castigated the Brownlow medalist, having a go at his body weight and his general demeanour, and then Swanee did what Swanee does best and put in an absolute blinder of a shift.
Well, Swanee, in typical Swanee fashion, Clocked in a lazy 42 disposals, 13 clearances, 6 tackles and 3 goals on Anzac Day. Yeah, not bad I guess. Swan had the ball on a string in the Miracle 1-point victory, with the number 36 taking out the Anzac medal following his monumental performance. I guess it's only fitting to touch base with our resident Collingwood expert Nick for his hot take on one of his favourite ever players.
This Stay in Swan moment was so good that I thought about more stuff and had to re-record it. So, picture this. You're going into Anzac Day, Essendon have won 4 in a row, Collingwood are 2-2 and the pressure's on Nathan Buckley. The injuries are piled up and Swanee's called fat during the week. He comes out, he dominates, he has over 40 touches, he kicks 3 goals, Collingwood win on Anzac Day.
What a player.
By 1980, Kevin Bartlett didn't have a whole lot to prove. He was 33, played in 4 premierships already, a few other grand finals, had played over 350 games, but apparently this wasn't good enough for him, so he went onto the MCG on grand final day and kicked 7 goals. He tried to kick about 11 because he was afraid of the handball. If you watch the highlights, I think in that game he only gave off 1 handball, which actually registered for a goal assist, but that's why he was christened the nickname Hungry, because he tried kicking all sorts of goals over his head, on the ground, left foot, right foot. 7 of them went in that day. He equalled the record for the most goals scored in a grand final and won, rightfully so, the Norm Smith medal on that day.
Well, I think that's all my notes that Athos has used up. Let's see, I might be able to add some more fun facts here. Well, KB missed a shot on goal in the last 3 minutes, which would have been a VFL record. Gee whiz. Let's see what else we have here. Yes. It was also the first grand final without either of the top 2 teams on the ladder after the home and away season. A stat that wouldn't be repeated until 2019. Oh, and the 1980 grand final was also part of the infamous Collie Wobbles era, which, oh dear, I forgot about Nick. We've had 2 losing Magpie Grannies in our countdowns in 2 weeks. Let's check in on him.
Take the result away from it because, I understand that this is an Athos Sirianos move to get this certain spot of Kevin Bartlett dominating Collingwood in the 1980 grand final in there. It was great. It was great. I don't really have much else to expand on it. Yeah.
I reckon a third one next week isn't out of the question. Oh, this will cheer Nick right back up. Nathan Buckley was one of the best players to ever represent the black and white, with his sterling performance in the 2002 grand final loss proof of his greatness. Bucks notched up 32 touches and a goal to take out the Norm Smith medal, becoming just one of 4 players to do so in a losing grand final.
It is very rare that a player wins the Norm Smith medal in a losing grand final. And Nathan Buckley is one of the very few, including guys like Chris Judd. And that's what he did in 2002 in a game that was incredibly tough. It was resilient. You had to be tough to get through it. People were copping wax, and Buck stood up.
Almost didn't go his way, funnily enough. So Michael Voss had 5 really crucial touches in the last few minutes of play, and it could have swung the Norm Smith voting in his favour, but because at the time the judges' votes had to be compiled before the completion of the final quarter, this meant that Bucks was sort of locked in as the winner about 5-10 minutes out from the finish before Voss had a chance to play his full game. So funnily enough, they changed the rule after this grand final.
I'll tell you what, that performance was incredible, summed up by that beautiful goal on the run from just outside 50 on a tight angle in wet conditions. Nathan Buckley, an absolute superstar. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to get the premiership as a player, but hopefully he can get one as a coach one day.
Now this is just inconceivable. This was an absolute epic for the ages in 1993, with the legendary Gary Ablett and the towering talent of Paul Salmon booting bamboozingly big bags at their respective ends of the ground. Their combined total tally, 24-13.
You'd think Paul Salmon would be the leading goal scorer from that game. Right? Wrong. He would be beaten by one Gary Ablett Senior who kicked 14 goals, 7. So between them they kicked 24 goals, registered 37 scoring shots, which is just absolutely insane.
Paul Salmon rose like a salmon and stung like a bee. Jeez, this script writing is questionable. He kicked 10-6 while Ablett snared an almighty 14-7 in a career-best performance. Gee whiz, I haven't done maths with numbers this big since high school.
I can't imagine kicking 14 goals in a game and my team still loses. I'd be pretty filthy with that.
Ablett's relocation to full forward after he came incredibly close to retirement the year prior proved to be a masterstroke, with the Geelong superstar passing the 50-goal barrier after 6 games and snaring the Coleman with a casual 124 goals for the year. On the flip side, Salmon went on to enjoy premiership success with the Bombers that year, booting 5 in the stunning grand final triumph.
This match was a clash of the Titans. It was like Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. It was like Michael Jordan versus LeBron James that had ever happened. It was like peanut butter versus jelly. It was the two best forwards of the time going head to head.
Absolutely remarkable. But hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen, because this is about to get even bigger! Simply the best. Now, when I first read this in my footy travels, I thought it was a typo. But it's true, alright? A whopping 17 goals from the champion Jason Dunstall himself. Now, the Chief was used to booting big bags week after week, but this 1992 masterclass was something else entirely.
Oh, you kicked 17 goals in a game, you kicked over 100 points to your own name. Some players don't even kick 17 goals in their career. Jason Dunstall decided to make Waverley Park his own backyard. He made it as if he was playing back in the old Dunstall backyard and decided to say, well, I'm going to relive my childhood memories and I'm going to kick 17 goals on this poor bastard. And that's exactly what he did.
I wish I'd kicked 17 goals in my backyard footy career. With a Hawthorn win already penciled in the books, attention soon turned to whether Dunstall would be able to surpass the VFL record of the most goals in a game, Fred Fanning's 18 goals in 1947. And while history beckoned, Dunstall ended up 1 goal shy of the almighty record.
It was hard enough to stop the Chief normally, but on this day, he was absolutely unstoppable. 17 goals. No matter who you're playing or what level or anything like that, it's just absolutely extraordinary. I think he said years later in some interviews that he sort of had an inkling that he was nearing the record, with scoreboard graphics saying he was X amount of goals away. He didn't get there in the end, but either way, this is just an absolutely deserving number 1 spot on this list.
Dunstall took out that year's Coleman medal, his 3rd, finished 2nd in the Brownlow and secured his first All-Australian nomination.
Now, we've spoken about Ablett and Salmon kicking crazy amounts of goals, but 17 goals! Was he playing on the invisible man? How does one kick 17 goals? Teams today struggle to kick 17 goals. He must have been playing against the bollard, for Christ's sake.
The answer? He was playing against Richmond. There are so many wonderful moments that have made up the fabric of our game, but from an individual standpoint, it's pretty hard to top this Herculean effort. Regardless of grand finals or prelims, against good sides or bad sides, a 17-goal game is out of this world. And in our eyes, a worthy number 1 in our top 10 individual performances of all time.